Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you may see a link down below that you can click on. You can join this on another day if you'd like. There'll be a little hot link there that'll take you to a Zoom registration, and you can join us if you'd want to be part of the conversation. If you're here for the first time, let me walk you around a little bit. If you're here in Zoom, you're probably an attendee. There's attendees and there's panelists. You'll see a bunch of panelists here. You're an attendee, and you're probably wondering, how do they become panelists? Well, they got here early. We opened the doors at 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then we just have kind of a rolling conversation for a little while. It's not, I can't promise any structure. We're just all chit-chatting about whatever we're interested in until about 6:30. At 6:30, we distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is it's where we all talk between this. It's about 500 of us that are talking in between all these shows. So you can join Discord there. You do need to use it by 7 o'clock. So once I do this announcement, you'll have to come another day. At 6:40 to 6:45, we actually do our mic checks. So we go through everybody and we kind of go do the mic checks there. If you see us doing mic checks when you get here, it's over. You can't get in. So it's important for you to get here before 6:40, because sometimes between 6:40 and 6:45, we'll start those mic checks depending on the size of our panel. And so, and then at 7 o'clock, we start Q&A. Now, you'll see a Q&A down below. You can ask your own questions, or you can vote on other people's questions. One thing that's important is try to keep those questions less than 5 lines. We have to read these in a live show, so try not to be too verbose. Also, only ask one question per post. So don't start stacking questions up. Just ask one question at a time and let people vote on the one that you put in there. There's a 50-50 chance that we'll only answer the top question if you put 2 in, or we just dismiss it because it's too complicated. So so it's important to add just one question at a time. And then finally, don't put comments in the questions. Comments are for the chat. The chat is where you can add comments. Now you can add comments. You can ask, but you can put questions there too. We just won't answer them. You can put them down there in the chat, and you can talk amongst yourselves. You can ask each other questions, but we're mostly focused on the Q&A. Now, the thing to think about if you've got questions is to get them in early and vote on the questions that you like early. What happens is that we kind of look at the number of questions, and we look at how much time we have, and you'll see us just start to speed up the answers. So we'll start off being kind of lackadaisical, going through it and really chewing on a question. And then by the end, we're saying yes, no, blue, red. And so we'll generally get through almost all the questions. But if you want certain questions, or if you have certain questions, ask them early, vote on questions early, get them up there, sort them out the way you want to see them. There's a whole bunch of people here. Y'all can make a decision about how we run the show. So vote on those questions there. We've got the second hour, 8 to 9, is when we talk about one thing specifically. So today we're going to talk about voiceovers. We've got some great voiceover talent here. And so I think that we're going to have a good time here. Bill Davis is here, and we've got Steve Brazel is here as well, who do a lot of voiceovers, and David Lawrence has joined us. So we're going to have a couple people talking about it that are in the biz. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, answer your questions. Tomorrow, we're talking about lenses. Camera lenses. And so Chris Summers is going to talk about that. On Thursday, we're going to talk about prepping participants and guests and panelists with Carl Guess, who's here as well. And so he's going to be talking about that. And on Friday, we had the TBA, but we've decided to bring Jeff Keithley back to talk more about cloud production, because we don't think we hit that hard enough. So we're going to do that on Friday. And then Saturday is the long day, and we'll be talking about Unreal, Final Cut, live graphics, vMix with Leland Best. So a lot of stuff coming up this week. If you're interested, hopefully we'll see you here for all of it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. Chris, what do we got?
Well, Alex Mark Baker wants to revisit some of the discussion we had before the show, and he wants to know what we can learn about the stagecraft of Worldwide Developer Conference yesterday.
So I think that I guess my opinion of it, which I said a little earlier, but I'll just repeat it because everyone's here now, is I think it's 1,000 times better than the stage. Like, I don't see any reason why you should. I mean, I think that if we ever saw anything that proved that you don't need to do a live performance, that was it. It's tighter. It's much more pleasurable for the online audience to watch, which is by far the largest audience. I mean, you have a handful of people in a room and millions of people watching. Let's just make it for the audience, And so I think that it was better. I think that I think it was as I said on a tweet or whatever, 1,000 times better, but half of what they could have done. Like, I think that the teleprompter in that environment doesn't make any sense. What you end up with is, as I have stated a couple of times, is you end up with glassy eyes and what I call the presenter pentameter, which is this weird sing-songy thing that happens when people read their slides or read a teleprompter and when they don't have the right training. Which is why we have people like Carl to train them not to do that. So anyway, there was a lot of presenter pentameter going on in the yesterday, and I just didn't think that was necessary. I think they should have watched a lot of good eats and connections and figured out, oh, we can just talk to the camera and we can only memorize a sentence at a time and make it great. Phil.
Yeah, I really liked that they kept it moving and did at least attempt a stylized somewhat stylized presentation. I think it's much more than we would have gotten from almost any other technology company in a pre-recorded keynote. And you may or may not like the stylistic choices they made, but you know what? We were treated to a pretty snazzy. They've got some pretty high-level folks there, professionals doing video production and presentation production. So I thought on a whole, it was a real treat to kind of watch it. I'm not sure I'd want to see it that way every single time, but I appreciated it. Yeah.
I would love to just see them continue to evolve it. That's all. Right. That's all I'm saying is, like, I don't want them. What I don't want to see is them go back. I think that we're going to have. I think that if Apple does 2 or 3 more of these with the whole COVID thing, and they learn and evolve from this, we're never going to be able to go back. And what it'll do is it'll drive keynotes out because it's going to be. Because once Apple kind of sets the pace there, I think we're going to see a lot more of like this, but hopefully people learn from it. And the reason I comment so much on it, I'm hoping people learn from it and say, hey, let's get rid of the teleprompters. Let's have people memorize their lines only in short bits. Let's be a little bit more creative. And again, look at TV shows that have been doing this for the last 40 years. And there's ways to do this where the host is different people are talking into the camera and having that conversation with the viewer. Now, I think that, then having more live interaction, everything else is really useful. But I think as a we have to say certain things and we're going to pre-record it. I think they can learn a lot from YouTubers who do it really well. Look at a Marquise Brownlee. I mean, that kind of conversation, or a Justine Ezerick, taking those kinds of deliveries and applying them to those are all very heavily scripted. Marquise Brownlee is very heavily scripted. So is there's so many people that it can be done naturally, and I just don't think that they quite hit that mark. George, then Chris, then Steve, and then we're going to move on.
Alex, the choice of shot, the opening shot of the backdrop of the theater. You didn't see it? Okay. Anyone else have thoughts on that? I mean, it was kind of weird seeing the empty theater. I mean, I get it, but it was just like empty.
It set the stage. It was perfect. It was from the stage with the camera upstage looking out at the open theater behind Tim. It perfectly set the stage.
All I can say is spared no expense on that theater. It's pretty nice, isn't it? Like that's the point I'm trying to make. It's a
bummer to be empty.
Really nice theater. Yeah, Chris, go ahead. You're gonna say something, Chris?
Oh yeah, I was just a snide comment. Do you think the reality distortion field is null and void when you're watching it virtually? There's an energy in the room that changes the way you perceive every bit of it. They will absolutely go back.
That half the room is employees that are clapping. Yeah,
doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. They will absolutely go back. For one, they built the hashtag clean show theater. I mean, they're gonna go back.
Well, I just think that the production could be so much more interesting if they don't. That's all. It's just that we can finally watch a show that's worth watching for 2 hours. I mean, rather than just waiting for the highlight clips. Because that's all we're waiting for is the highlight clips. Like I'm just waiting. Okay, just give me the highlights of what you talked about, and then we'll move on. And I can just see the 10-minute version to me is the only one that I really care about anyway. Steve, and then Sky.
Me, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So for me, I agree with what everybody said. I actually think on the time frame that they had to pull off doing this whole thing live and the way that they did it, I thought they did really well. But my big issue with the teleprompter, echoing what Alex said, is if you're going to do it, it really shows the weaknesses of some performers or some speakers, presenters, not knowing how to use a teleprompter, because some people were amazing. And then
I would say some people were okay.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, in comparison, though, because some of the eye travel was so pronounced, you've got to have people really practice it.
So the eye travel, though, has a lot to do with the lens choices. So a lot of those were wide angle lenses to show you where you're at, and the camera's a lot closer. And that makes it so as you move that camera closer to the subject and you open up that, you're going to see eye travel because that screen is so much bigger in reference. So when you have a longer, the ones that you saw that where there wasn't a lot of eye travel, there was a longer lens on it. And so he doesn't have to move as much to see everything. And so the frame at which the teleprompter holds how big the teleprompter is in your vision frame makes a huge difference in eye travel, which is why I don't use them. like I don't use it personally. I figured if I'm going to say something that has to be said every single word, I just memorize the whole thing. Jan. Oh, Sky, I didn't see you there. Sky, then Jan. Quickly.
Thank you. It's a much longer rant. Just that Chris's comment about the energy you get in a live performance as a performer, and you're feeding back off of that energy. And again, the last question would be the difference between a person that has a talent versus a person that has a gift. Robin Williams had a gift. Others can learn to be funny, but
you can learn to deliver lines.
Absolutely.
We used to, you can definitely learn to deliver
practice
lines.
with.
And Sky, are you on Wi-Fi or
I am Wi-Fi currently. I'm sorry, sir.
So the only reason I want to do that is I want to use you as an example. If everyone just heard that little thing that Sky did while he was talking, that's when we say that that's a micro stall in Wi-Fi, that's Wi-Fi. So anyway, so that's that's why we tell people not to do it.
I'm glad I can sacrifice myself, throw myself under the bus.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sky. Thank you. Go ahead, Jan, real quick.
Real quick, I thought there was too much movement of the camera.
I'll agree with you on that one.
When I have to ask myself whether they're using artificial intelligence or Unreal, whether it is real, it made my mind really confused on what they were doing. And in that scene, one more thing, in that gym scene, there was no reflection from the mirror whatsoever. So I'm saying that's got to be green screen, but you're saying it's not.
No, it wasn't. Carl, go ahead.
Muscle memory. That's what it takes to deliver off teleprompter off a stage. You can run those off-site. You put them in front of people, and you just go and you go and you go and you go, and you get comfortable with it. And that's what makes a good presenter.
Yeah, and again, in a live environment or a long take environment, I think that if you have like an hour that you have to give, but if you look at the sections that they had there, each person was not handling very much. And there's enough edits that they could have edited around it. So they didn't have to memorize that much. And that's why I wouldn't use the teleprompter in that environment. I do agree with you, Carl, that for a live presentation or a long presentation where someone's going to talk for an hour or half an hour or even 5 minutes, but there was no single clip that was probably more than 30 seconds in that whole thing. And I know it would have been some work, but it would have been much more natural for them just to not have to have a teleprompter.
Yeah,
I think that in this case,
I think my only point is that if people looked like they weren't comfortable with using a prompter, there are really easy ways to get around that.
It is.
But the other thing is you don't necessarily have to memorize. I mean, you can go with short bursts of words, and
right. You're absolutely right.
Really well too.
Well, I mean, memorize the short bursts of words, but you only have to say a couple words at a time. I mean, we've had people like look at it, say it a couple times, walk out, do it, come back, look at the next one, walk out. And that's how a lot of these shows get cut, is people memorizing the one sentence that they have to say next and then coming back out. I mean, they practice it a lot, but it makes it relatively easy to get that done. Anyway, next question.
Michael Watkins says, I need a recommendation on a NAS strategy for home archiving. I use S3, Dropbox, and OneDrive. I currently use a Drobo 5N and keep spare drives, but I just bricked on a reboot, Drobo, and my only option was to buy another Drobo, good strategy, to regain access to the data on the disk pack. Ouch.
Phil?
Yeah, I highly recommend Synologies. I have both a Drobo and a Synology, but I use the Drobo as sort of ephemeral, temporary storage, backing everything up to the Synology NAS, which are excellent devices. The QNAPs are great too.
Paul, then Jason, then Doug. Try to keep it to about 15 to 30 seconds each.
I also own Drobo, and I have the service account, so the service contract. So if you have the service contract, they'll swap out the unit for you for free.
Jason?
Sorry. Yeah. When Drobo was acquired, they really have kind of like stopped keeping up to date. And that's really disappointing to me. I'll echo again what Phil said. Synology is great.
Doug?
I would highly recommend not Drobo. Anything but Drobo. I had 3 of them, die, move on.
Next question.
There's I think there's a typo in here. Given the WWDC announcement confirming Apple Silicon on future Macs, and my previous question about buying a new Mac, do you still wait for the rumored new redesigned iMac for later in the year? I think you buy the best computer you can when you need it.
Yeah, I mean, and number one, and Chris, also make sure we know who's asking the question.
Oh, that was Charles Klein. No,
Yeah,
it wasn't. That was Peter Moore.
Thanks, Peter. I don't think that anything's going to change. I think that the computers that you get now are going to be as good as they're going to be. They're going to be, they're not going to slow down, and they're going to be supported for as long as a Mac is supported. And then there'll be, there's going to be this soft gradation where you start to see more and more of the new chips. But I don't think that and everything's going to work across. I mean, you're going to have more compatibility issues with the new chips. And so you can't wait for 5 years to buy a new computer. Or even 2 years. And so you just buy what you can when you can. I always try to, if I look at a computer and I don't know how I'm going to pay it off with the work that I'm doing in 6 months to a year, I want to have it paid off at that point. Like, it did enough work that it was worth buying. If I think it's going to take longer than that to amortize it, then I usually spend less. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. The ARM chips and the rest of that they're putting into them, I think they're going to go into the modest units first. So if you're in a professional circumstance and you need to kick out a lot of work, I think those are going to be the development bed. And later on, those new silicon chips are going to go into the high-end models that really drive our business stuff.
I was impressed that they went with Maya as a let's show you Maya running. I was like, well, that's aggressive. But they didn't. One thing they didn't show was, I don't think, unless I missed it, I was skipping through it because I was in meetings, but I don't think they showed Photoshop. Like, I don't think there was a.
They
did they show?
They did.
Oh, they did. Okay,
They
okay.
did.
I missed it. I was like, I got to go back and find out if they showed Photoshop. So
Yeah, it was like a
Gaussian
20
blur.
gig file, and it was pretty impressive.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think, and I think the transition won't be too bad for us, and I think that they'll take a lot of time. What they're not doing is what they did with Final Cut, which is that we're going to release something and then end of life the thing that was right before it. All this stuff is going to be, everything's going to kind of work along in a gradient. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Jesse and then Steve, and then we'll move on.
I've read somewhere that Apple was saying within 2 years all their machines would transition, which is a lot faster than what you were thinking, the 3 to 5 years.
I don't think that's what they said there. They said that they would be making them all, but they said they're still releasing Intel Macs for the for into the future. So I think that I think everything will have a ARM option, but I think that there'll be two different things. I mean, 2 years will be very aggressive. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, with any business decision, buying a computer is always the same. You figure out the lifespan you expect to keep that hardware. If your standard PC or Mac replacement is 3 to 5 years, and you look at, I do recall actually a 2-year mention somewhere, or maybe I read it. But even then,
I saw the 2-year, but I don't think. But again, I think that even if you bought everything
set it
for the
on
next
stage.
years,
But even then, if you figure then the first generation of actual iMacs come out 2 years from now or 3 years from now, and then that's first generation, and then you wait for second generation for all the compatibility issues, you're looking 5 years from now. So buying a Mac now is completely a reasonable thing to do. I would not hold off, but there will be a point where you may want to.
And that point is generally when they stop selling the Intel ones.
Yeah,
which will be somewhere between
near the end of life of Intel on Mac.
Which will be somewhere between 2 and 5 years from now. But even then, if you buy one 2 years from now, it'll still be fully supported by everything for the next 8 years. So I don't think they're going to do anything that's shortening it, because usually their end of lives are about 8 years. 6 to 8 years.
It would be interesting to see in 2 years what the performance differential would be between an iMac that, say, was top of the line with the Intel and the new silicon.
I think the big thing for everyone else is going to be, the hard part they're going to have is that Apple now is, the more vertical it gets, the faster they can move, and the more they can integrate all these things. And it's going to be really hard to, it's going to be really hard to compete. I do think Apple is barreling towards antitrust. Because they're just, everybody else is so fragmented that they're going to be continually hobbled, and Apple's going to continue to move forward in a highly vertical market. And I think that they're going to, sometime this decade, they're going to have to deal with antitrust, because they're going to get so big because no one else can do it. They're getting to a point where they're at a size where no one else can compete with them. And that's usually when the antitrust starts to come up to speed. Jason and Colin, and we'll move on.
So
quickly.
you think that the antitrust will come up even though they're by no means a monopoly in the desktop market segment?
there's going to be a point where people can't compete with them. I'm just saying that they can't. When you own everything, it's like Krupp's Arms. You know, like when you own absolutely the entire vertical market of, you know, all those bits and pieces, they're gonna have a problem. Like, it's just going to be like, people are going to start saying that they're going to get back into this iPhone thing, which I argue against right now, but where they own they own an ecosystem that they have 100% control over. And I mean, you know, when there's a bunch of the technologies they're working on that are so aggressive that, I mean, that we can see coming, AR and everything else, they're going to be able to develop faster when they have control of all the software and all the hardware development. When they get the chips out of the way and they're not hobbled by Intel, and they have all the bits and pieces, they're just going to be able to move a lot faster than everyone else, you know. And at some point you stick out so much where there'll be industries, you know, again, like as we go into online education, we were talking about this yesterday. If you're a school that wants to do online education and you're not using a Mac, you're hobbled. Literally you've tied your legs together, you know, because you just don't have because all the fragmented tools that you have to create media are all broken up. If you know, when you get into AR, there's not going to be anything else that's going to be competitive, you know, as they move forward, you know. And so those are ththings that are going to be, you know, difficult, you know, as they move. They're going to be able to leverage their position into new industries over and over and over again, you know. And I think that's something they'll have to be careful of. Anyway, next question.
Courses for a rookie's guide to getting up and running and get immediate value, and a deep dive after that.
Wait, say that again.
Hasmik said he finally received his ATEM Mini Pro. He's excited. Any suggestions on resources for a rookie's guide to get up and running and get immediate value with a deep dive after that? So he wants to learn quickly.
I think Joseph Lanaschke has a bunch of good stuff. We have who is Aaron? Is it Aaron has some good videos on YouTube that's kind of in our group?
Aaron's good.
Yeah, Aaron's got some good stuff in our group. Aaron, is it Parecki? I believe he's in our group, and he's done some great videos. And then and so those are on YouTube. And then Steve Martin. Yeah, I can't think of the name.
Ripple
Barker.
Ripple Training
has a good one too. Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
First and foremost, please read the manual. It's well designed, it's well spaced, and it is insanely clear. But after that, John Barker has a channel called Here to Record that's spectacular.
And Phil, go ahead.
I'd like to respectfully disagree with the manual. It's because it tries to cover all the ATEM products. It's really not clear about what is and is not included in the Mini. And so I've stumbled a number of times.
They changed that. There's a dedicated Mini manual.
But it doesn't cover everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Phil, your audio is really thin.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one quick thing because you mentioned Joseph Lanaschke, who has some great stuff on the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro, but you won't find him most likely under that name. He goes by Photo Joseph.
Yeah, Photo Joseph. Sorry. Next question.
Yeah, he can't spell Lanaschke, so he doesn't use it.
We all know Joseph. So it's like...
Charles Klein says he's using a PR40 to a MixPre 3.2 to a Pocket 6K. Keep going. To an ATEM Mini Pro to a MacBook Pro 16-inch.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom is not seeing his audio. He sees levels on the MixPre. Any thoughts?
Is he seeing levels in the ATEM?
Exactly.
Charles Hendricks says, check that the ATEM's audio button for the camera is on.
There you go.
And he's seeing levels.
He sees it on the Mini, on the MixPre.
But the question is, does he see levels in the ATEM? Is the question.
He does not say.
Right.
He does not say.
So that's the question is that does he see levels there? Because it could be a mic setting in, it could be a couple things, but one of the things it could be is a mic setting, like what the camera is set to, or what it's looking for as far as audio goes. So you would see it in the Mini, but not in the camera, because the pipeline that is being described is almost exactly my pipeline. Mine's a little different. I have a Scorpio, which instead of the MixPre, it goes out into the camera. The camera goes into and when you see me offsite, I'm using that, and then it goes back in through a web presenter, which would be similar. The only thing I could think of though is that for some reason it's not set correctly in the camera is what I'm most likely. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I sorry, mini rant, but this is basic troubleshooting, and what you have to do is find out where you see the signal, and then go to the very next thing in the chain and establish that you have signal there by whatever means necessary. Then go to the next thing in the chain and establish that you have signal there by whatever means necessary, and you continue to the end. And this is just something, I literally just wrote an article that was published like 2 weeks ago on this exact thing, because it's too easy to kind of have this, maybe it's this and maybe it's this, and this sort of scattershot approach. And if you just start from where you know you have signal and just step by step go through to the end, you'll find the problem every time.
Next question.
Ooh, caught me off guard. Brian Mansour says, do you think Tim Cook's audio, I think we've discussed this, from WWDC sounded too clean or too direct, like it needed some spatial characteristics in that theater or room?
I felt like it was a little overprocessed. I think all of the stuff was a little overprocessed, in my opinion. You just didn't feel like you were there. But I can see why you do that. I mean, you clean it all up and trying to get them all even between them. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jason.
It's clear to me that there wasn't ADR because there was a Steadicam shot towards the end when they came back to him where they did 180 walk around with the screen, and the space of the audio changed. And I think it's because there were fans or something else was different. So yeah, I thought it was incredibly good, but clearly not reflecting the space.
Next question.
I know it's been asked, but what remote controlled camera and or mixer would you use for a church service stream? They have a donated PTZ IP security camera, which only outputs RTSP.
I think that would be hard to use. I think it would be hard. You go ahead, Jeff.
Run away. Don't try to use that camera for anything in the production world. It is just going to be a nightmare. Yeah. Just an actual nightmare.
Yeah, sometimes free stuff is not as free as it would sound if you count time at all. And so the so that you're going to end up in a lot of pain trying to get that camera to work. I didn't want to say it first, but I let Jeff say it because I knew he would. Jan and then Mike, and then we'll move on.
Might want to look at a Mevo Start and maybe a couple of them. You might be able to use it that way. We'll see.
I have to admit, the Mevos, I think I said this before, that every time I touch them, they break. And there's something about me or something like that. But I've had it literally, their product manager brought it to me at an event and wanted to show it to me. And as soon as I touched it, it was not working. He goes, "Oh, it was just working a second ago." It's like, I know, it's just me. So I don't use the, I know there's something about it that I just have this thing oh, Mevos, because they just break all the time for me. They seem to work for somebody else. I mean, other people use them, but I just can't figure it out. Mike, go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, it was my question. I mean, I can think of a way to make it work because run it through a computer or through a laptop or something like that. But it's my buddy who needs it, and so
I would buy him another. I would buy him another camera.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just saying that you're going to spend so much time dealing with that. I would buy him another camera before I try to put that into the pipeline. I would just be like, let me buy you something because
but based on this is a problem that a lot of people are asking about. What would you drop in the church? So that you can have volunteers run the show remotely, no matter what it would be. I mean, you can't leave an ATEM Mini there or something like that. You'd have to put something, some
Jeff
kind of remote control thing.
Jeff and then Jeff, you guys are gonna have to fight over it.
I've done a whole lot of I go guess one F, so I get first. Okay, so I've done a lot of church installs, and the thing about church installs is you do have to make it easy enough for the parishioners and the volunteers, because they don't usually have full-time people there producing stuff. So you have to make it easy enough for them to be able to operate, yes, but also you can't make it too complicated. So it has to be easy enough to set up. So a simple camera going into a laptop is better than trying to hack together a couple, 2 or 3 different security-based type cameras. No matter even if they are 4K, you're not going to get the quality out of it. It would be almost better if you dropped an iPad in there and did it straight to Facebook.
A couple iPads or something, or just an iPad. It would probably be better. Go ahead, Jeff Francis.
Yeah, so either a web presenter or a Blackmagic Ultra Studio Mini is a cheap way to get video into the computer. The web presenter will get you audio as well. If you use the Ultra Studio Mini, you need an audio interface. So you can either use a camcorder with line level inputs, which you can get for like $1,000-$1,200, or if you want PTZ, then PTZ Optics has some decent SDI cameras. So PTZ Optics with the Ultra Studio Mini recorder and a separate audio interface.
And the other thing I'll say is that I've trained a lot of people all over the world, and you can, if you're willing to put the time into it, you can build a little kit that actually has a lot of control that even kids, I mean, I've trained 10-year-old kids to shoot relatively good video, for live events. And so it's doable to push that outer envelope and get them. You just have to put the training time in to have them really get it, and then just have them practice and know it's better than what it was before. So you can even do that with webcams, to just have them start cutting some stuff. So just, some effort. Wetware can overcome a lot of hardware and software, but I wouldn't use that camera. Next question.
Stephen O'Brien says, "Hey Tucker, what was the plugin you used to measure audio? Was it Waves WLM? And if so," that's two questions. You need to have a DAW. Do you need to have a DAW open to insert this?
Go ahead, Tucker.
Workflow.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're a lot quieter than we expected.
Yeah. How about now?
I'd add a couple luffs to that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Waves WLM, and I'm running it as a plugin on a return through vMix, but for Mac, you can run it in Audio Hijack. On PC, there's a couple of different applications that go to Discord. We kind of talk about it somewhat regularly there, and hit me up. We can talk.
Next question.
Okay, is Sienna VT much easier to set up than using SRT, all the port configurations, etc.? And if an occasional user is there, and if an occasional user,
please include the names of who's asking.
Oh, this is sorry, Andrew Walton. And if an occasional user is there, a lower cost, easy to set up option. So.
Jeff.
I'm not really sure what he means by Sienna VT. If he's talking there's another product by MediaLux, which is MediaLux VT, which is video transport. But I'm not sure if he's crossing.
I'm going to guess that it's. I think he's crossing the streams because he's asking about SRT as well. So how would you compare those two?
Well, MediaLux uses SRT, so it's basically just bundling SRT.
Okay, got it. Bundled SRT or unbundled SRT is the question.
Yeah, straight SRT is about. I mean, it's about the interface getting it to it. So if you're just doing individual feeds from a location, then you could do SRT with just like one app, one place to one other place. But with MediaLux, it's about grouping multiple channels together so that you can sync those multiple channels to send all in one package out to a destination. I don't know. That question was kind of hard.
Next question.
So Alex, I don't know what you want me to do. I think we've covered this. I'll read it. Kevin McCardle says, I mean, I could have dismissed it. What do you think of all the Apple ARM talk means for the recent Mac Pro? I think we've covered that.
Yeah, we covered that. Let's move on.
Okay.
Nothing.
Andrew Walton said, no, I'm sorry. That one got boom. Kevin Murphy says, any recommended PTZ turrets and heads with remote control without a camera included?
Well, repeat that one more time.
So this is what it's, I'll read it verbatim. I think I know what he means. Any recommended PTZ turrets, heads with remote control without a camera included?
I mean, the ones, so there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them that I mean, at the higher end, there's things like telemetrics, which are the ones that we've used a lot of. So telemetrics will handle big, heavy cameras with big lenses and manage all those. Then it goes down. PTZ Optics, I think PTZ Optics, don't they make a smaller one? I think. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, there's on the higher end, telemetrics, Mark Roberts.
Well, Mark Roberts is at the higher end. You know, like it's exactly.
I love them, but they're great.
They're great. They're great.
But they actually do have a model that's called the Whisper that was 5,000. So that was a big difference than a 12,000 that we paid for our original ones. But it used the AJA RovoCam, which is probably the second worst camera I've ever had in my life.
You know, I wanted to like it so much. I wanted to like it. I was so excited. You wanted to work
with it was just
What's
horrendous.
the first
It's
worst?
just worse. I can't say that on this group. I'm sorry. It'll be something better in private. But the other ones to look out for would be somebody like the guys up in Dallas, Rushworks. Rushworks has one that's about $400-500 even.
And I think they have it. Can't you use like a game controller with it?
Well, a lot of the new heads can do that. Another great one that I just thought about is BR. I think it's BR something. It's a UK company, BR Remote maybe. They have some phenomenal stuff, but again, it's more of a broadcast side. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something that can give you a move on air, you have to spend the money to get it. There's just no way around it. But if you're looking to automate your cameras to go preset to preset, then there's choices out there. One of the things about the Rushworks that was cool is it could use a DMX controller. So those of you that are in the lighting world, it's just like moving a head, and so like a pan tilt head. So that's a pretty easy thing to integrate into existing systems without dedicated hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other, I think we talked about this a while ago, but the other little tip is game operators. Gamers, really good PTZ control. Don't go for cameramen. They just complain about the PTZs and how they're not as good as their cameras. You go for the camera operators, like, this is amazing. These tools are awesome, and they perfectly smooth little pans, because to them the controllers are these massive high performance systems compared to their little game controllers. Next question.
Doug Ferguson says, hey, Doug, if you feel a TAC-12 fiber cable got damaged, smashed in a door, would you buy a fiber tester or just send it in and make 2 cables from it?
Both. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like you can own fiber, lots of fiber, or any significant amount of fiber without a tester. Like without being able to test your cables, or without being able to terminate them and everything else. I have a kit. And I don't think you can have, just things happen. And so you need to know what's going on. You need to be able to test it. You need to be able to, so if you're investing in fiber, I think that's part of what comes with it. Otherwise I'd probably cut it. And just
I have the light tester. I just don't have,
I
have a light tester. I just don't have the very, very expensive wave tester. And I don't know if I should spend the money or just.
How much is it? It's a couple thousand?
Yeah, like 2,600. It's a 1,000-foot TAC-12, and
how many rolls do you have of TAC-12?
Smashed the cable today or this last weekend.
How many rolls of TAC-12 do you have?
2.
Then I send it in and have it cut. They can have more. I send it in and have it more. I mean, like I think at our height we had like, I don't know, 15 or 20, rolls of TAC. And at that point, you're always dealing with something. And so then it was worth having the tester. But if you only have a couple rolls, then I would have it. You can have it sent to be tested, but I probably just have it cut. Can you see where it was pinched?
Oh, absolutely. No, it's somebody shut the door on it, and the entire truck went dark.
I've had mine get. What's funny is I've had mine get pinched in a door, and we've lost signal in the truck. And then we opened the door; it was fine. It was just that it got bent. It couldn't make it around the corner.
Well, that's okay. That's exactly what happened, because I went and I found where the problem was, because the truck went dark, and then I jiggled the cable, and then I came back, and I'm like, okay, do I trust this cable or not?
So what I will say is that that's a slightly different thing. If you don't see it broken, if you're still getting signal through it, the only thing I'll say is that once it cracks, it's not going to work anymore. And what I found with TAC-12 in that area is that what's happening is when it gets pinched, the light can't make it around the corner. But when it gets straightened back out again, it just goes fine. I will say in that respect, I've used fiber that for a long time after it's been pinched in a door, where it didn't pass signal because it was in the door. But once I pulled it out, it was fine. And I have used it without cutting it. So I admit I never used it for mission critical again, but I never had it go bad. so it was like, so you just have to decide, like, it was always like, it became like my backup fiber or the second runs or whatever. So it was marked as such. But we definitely had it. I definitely have had pinched fiber work later because it was too hard of a turn for the light. Okay. Next question.
Dorian Robinson says, I've been looking at platforms like teachable.com. Is this an option to expand office hours? And if so, how would you incorporate it?
I am not familiar with teachable.com. So I would have to, create online. Yeah, there's a couple of these. There's a couple of platforms that create online courses. I'm not a big course guy. So I probably should be, but I think that I'm kind of pretty invested in challenge based with tutorials, but it's kind of like a course, but it's not like we're going to take tests at the end, or there's going to be a quiz. Kind of hated those when I was a kid. So I just don't like them, so, and I feel like I can learn a lot without quizzes, which I find to be frustrating. David?
So this group seems to me to be a very much roll your own kind of thing. Not on a limb here, but Teachable is an SaaS, and I would definitely recommend doing a return on investment analysis of it. There are so many inexpensive plugins for WordPress. I use LearnDash for my LMS. And you want to be careful about building your business on somebody else's platform. That's the thing that I always offer to people that are like, should I use Teachable? Should I use Udemy? Should I use, all these places? And it's like, they're really expensive in the end.
Right. Good point. Next question.
Carl Marxer says, is it possible that Apple may have used Unreal Engine to generate their backgrounds for the speakers?
It's possible, but almost 100% unlikely. I just
You just said possible, and then you said 100%.
Okay.
And then you said
transitions.
You said that. I was going to say
maybe the transitions.
Maybe, but I don't think. I think that when you start doing that in the time frame that they had to work on it, it's like just pulling a thread out. As someone who's done tons of visual effects, building a pipeline around, hey, we're going to do a bunch of virtual sets would just, it would just create, because they already have great sets. They already have great. There's nothing there that isn't there already. Like, why would you take something that you already have complete access to with nobody walking through it and then recreate it so that you can do it in the studio? I think that would be
what do you estimate the timeline was?
Well, they probably made the decision in March. They probably made, I don't know when the timeline was, but I'm guessing I bet you they were talking about it in January, thinking about it in February, and making a decision 1st of March. But again, okay, we're going to rebuild a bunch of locations that we already have complete access to with nobody in them. It's just not logical from a high-end production. I can see people wanting to stretch the envelope and everything else, but now you have keying issues, and you have position issues, and you have lighting issues, and there's other bridges to burn than those. Jesse and Chris.
Yeah, from what I know about the Apple campus, and I've been watching them construct it with great interest, it all seemed like the physical building that they had. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about the presentation. A lot of people because it's one of the best pieces of corporate architecture done in a long time. It's really the first insight you got into a lot of the spaces that you hadn't seen before. I used to watch on Apple Insiders, people would fly drones overhead as they were building it, and they did that every couple months.
Yep.
So they gave us a peek inside the world. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Chris?
What I was going to say about this whole thing is, yes, Apple likes to defer making decisions until they actually have to. And I also I imagine a sales pitch where somebody says, we'll shoot it virtual, we'll be able to, we'll have smaller crews, everybody will be safe. I don't know. I'm not 100% on it, but
I think it could have been smaller crews. I just think that, and everyone was safe. I just don't think that it was needed.
Did you see the disclaimer at the very end of the video where they talked about production safety?
Yep.
Yeah. I thought that was tastefully done.
Next question.
Roz McNulty says, I am having trouble recording in ScreenFlow. I know the answer to this one. Video, sound, and screen capture while I am trying to demo some 3D fashion simulation rendering. Any suggestions? Yeah, there is a plugin, Roz, that you have to download from Telestream. It is called the Telestream Sound something or other. And you have to be using that. And without that, you won't be able to record your voice and the computer audio and all the stuff. But it's an audio patching issue thing. if anybody else has anything to say.
Nope,
Sorry.
you nailed it. Next
Very
question.
every once in a while, I know what we're talking about here, Alex. I just need to show off once. We touched briefly. Nate Parcell says we touched briefly on timecode in vMix yesterday. Curious, curious what you guys are using to generate and receive timecode in vMix.
I'll pass that to Jeff because I'm not using time coding in vMix.
No one's using. Jeff's like, nope, I got nothing. So we don't know. We'll keep on working on it. I think that, I don't know. I'd be curious what you're using the time code for, in vMix, what it's useful for.
That would be my
standard way of using it. Yep, absolutely. So
there is a genre of production people that will never do anything if they don't have time code done. Yeah. I've done so much super low budget stuff that I was like, time code. When he touches his nose, sync it there.
We used to do mini slates. We used to say, give me a mini slate, and you go like this, and you have 3 cameras just pointing at the person, and that was it, and that was all it took to sync all the cameras. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you could add timers similar to what I'm doing here in the corner just to run the show so we know when our points of key points are. But that would be one way to just drop the timer into the video in the corner for a few seconds.
Well, I don't think that people want
with a clock.
And by the way, I think your clock is off. My clock says 7:48.
Yeah, a few hours maybe.
See, then now you've thrown us all off. All of our edits are gone. Now it's all your fault. Okay, next question.
Frank Lucian says, for the best audio in a Zoom call, are you going for completely dry or a little natural room sound or even adding a little artificial reverb when in a very dead room?
I want to be as dead as I want to be as dead on as I can be, like as clean as I can be in a Zoom call. Like there's other reasons we can talk about having ambient or whatever, but man, you just want people to understand what you're saying. So you just, it's all about just getting that voice as isolated as possible. Victor and then Jeff.
Just keep away from the reverb when we're talking about live streaming because we'll have words.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Bill should speak right now because he's the best example of this being in a very dead space.
I'm in a dead space, but Alex's point, intelligibility is your number one goal when you're doing something like this. You want people to understand what you're saying. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I was recording a Microsoft Teams meeting yesterday with 3 people in giant echoey spaces. 4. And I just got angry. I mean, the whole time I was just sitting there angry. I was like, I miss office hours where everybody sounds good.
Well, the funny thing is that what we're seeing over and over again are clients, government clients, corporate clients, and what is sinking in for them is how bad their conference rooms were. Like they just didn't get it. Like because they were never in it. Like the people that are using the conference rooms, they had a conference call. It's a speaker mic in the middle of a really hard surfaced conference room that looks pretty with lots of glass, and it's just echoey, and no one could understand what. Now they're on the other end of it as they start to bring it back in, and they're like, "We're just wondering what happened to our system because it's been, we'll be like, how long have you been using this? 6 years, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that's the way it sounds." And they're like, "You mean it's?" We literally had a client a couple days ago go, "You mean it sounded like this the whole time?" And we were like, "Yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's what conference rooms sound like with a speakerphone." And they were horrified. There was like just silence. They were like horrified that they had been doing this for like 5 years or something with this, and they realized that the far end of every call didn't have any idea what they were saying the whole time, and that's what's sinking in. I think there's going to be a huge investment in AV. As they go back when they actually have to have it work rather than giving it lip service. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I agree. Like you want it as clean and as dry as possible. As Bill said, you want intelligibility because like for example, narrative films, like which I mostly work on, that those are situations where you want to provide an illusion of something. So you do want some room in there. You do want some reverb and echo and delays in there. But if you're doing a meeting, the number one priority is getting the message across.
Next question.
Brian Mansars, would you recommend the YOLOBox for live streaming wedding ceremonies and receptions any experience or thoughts on it using a Sony A7 III? Phil, do you have any thoughts on streaming weddings?
I don't know about the YOLOBox.
Jason looks like he knows about it.
My only thought about the YOLOBox is like YOLO. Like, what a terrible name for a product. Like, I can't think of worse.
Well, that wasn't really talking about the product there.
Sorry. I just ADD. That's it. I play in the card.
You know, that's what everyone was told, was to come up with a name that is original. So that they came up with YOLO. So I don't know enough about the YOLOBox to know. So we're going to leave that one. We got stumped on that one. All right, next question.
Simon Elliott says, "Oh, I was skipped over. I know how much Alex Lindsay knows about the Mac Mini." I don't know what that means.
Know.
Sorry,
I don't know what that
Simon.
means either, because I don't know.
I think it was because Simon may have had a previous question that I dismissed because it was virtually the same as stuff we had already discussed. Sorry, Simon.
I don't.
It's in the dismiss tab, if that's what the one you're
would be in the
referring to.
dismiss tab. Does someone buy an Intel Mac Mini now or a ARM one when it comes about? The keynote suggests a developer.
That's just
ARM
for
Mini
developers.
soon.
Yeah, that's just for developers.
Yeah,
and it'll probably be hard to get into. I'm sorry, I didn't see the question. It was a little bit more complicated. So you're right to re-ask it or to push us back on it. But the Mac Mini, that's just going to be for developers and just so they can test stuff. I mean, I would buy one because it's a great collector's item, but the chances of you getting one before the developers is very low. They're going to make a bunch of these and the developers are going to buy them, and they're going to probably rank the developers by how long they've been developers and what kind of developers and everything else. And so it's going to take a long time to get them all, but I would buy one. If I could get one, I would buy one because it's going to be the original ARM Mac. It's going to be one of those little classic Macs that you have on the back of your, in your shelf somewhere, or the box full of Macs that you're going to someday put on a shelf. Jeffrey, and then Victor, then Paul. I think that's it. Go ahead.
And
then Roscoe, quickly.
One thing just to note is the fact that that's not going to be the same ARM processor as what they end up coming out with. So you'll have a pre-processor to what will be in laptops and desktops.
And your audio is still breaking up. Victor?
Okay.
Yes, and just to tag on that, it's going to be an A12Z processor, so one of the older iPhone ones. It'll be fine for development. It only will have 2 USB-C ports and 2 USB-A ports, and no Thunderbolt. So that gives you some idea. That adds to the limit of the types of applications that are going to be distributed on round one of that hardware. It's a collector's item, but not a production machine.
Yeah, collector's item. It'd be fun to play with, but yeah, it's really for developers. Like it's not for general use, but it would be cool to have. That's it.
I want one to put next to my 128K Mac, which I still have,
and my Cube. Anyway, all right, go ahead, Paul.
I'm a registered developer, so I did try and sign up to get one, but you have to have a current app in the App Store.
Right, and I bet you they'll be ranking as they figure it out, because they're really just trying to. This is truly we're trying to make it useful for and they don't want people like me to buy one that I have no need for it right now. So I'm going to be the one that they want to sort out, so that the true developers that are really pushing this hard get what they need to do that. Roscoe and then Jesse.
Yeah, I was actually rotating back to Victor's death threat for reverb, but basically a narrative I also want as clean as possible.
We're going to keep.
I mean,
we're
I can add that all in post.
No, we're going to keep moving forward. Once that subject is, it's in the past. Jesse, go ahead.
So from what I read, the fine print on the Mac Mini is that it's going to be a rental for $500. That you're most likely not going to be able to keep it.
Well, how would they know?
That's exactly right.
How would they know? Like, I lost it. Like, it just disappeared. Like that's what's going to happen. It's going to be like the little Honda EVs, and they someone's trying to keep one.
There is some nasty fine print, but yeah. I mean, what are they going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're next question. We're running out of time.
All right. Doug Ferguson says, I want to sell videos to clients with a password protected shopping cart. 1 shopping cart per client. What's a way to best keep them from sharing the downloads?
It's impossible.
Guilt.
I mean, it's really like there's a certain level of loss that has to be acceptable. And you can put stuff on it, but what you end up with I distributed we distributed plugins for Final Cut, and we made it look like they were being installed, but we never asked for. We might even had a password. I don't think so. I think we gave you some kind of code that you had to put in, but we didn't do anything with it. You could totally copy it. It was one of the most pirated pieces of plugins for the Mac ever made. I was literally told, like, you can see it everywhere in BitTorrent, and we still made a lot of money on it. And so it was, people there, because the thing is folks that want to be legal will stay legal. If you're giving it to corporate clients, I don't know if you're selling it to individuals. Doug, are you selling to individuals or corporate?
It's actually dance studios, so it's kind of more of a complex back end because each studio would have its own page, but we still do DVDs, if you can believe it. In the standard DVDs, we offer Blu-rays, and they still buy the standard. But I don't want to do DVDs anymore. I just want to do digital download and be done with it. And so I'm having a hard time getting these studios to do the download, and I just don't know the best process.
I just think that they're going to, the problem is your friction level is going to be so sensitive that anything you add to make it harder for them to do it, they're just going to not want to do it. They're just going to go back to the DVDs. So I think that I don't even have a DVD player. I'm trying to find a new one because I need to.
Fuzzy TV.
Yeah, exactly. Grant. And then Yashai, but keep them quick. We got one more question.
I think it's all about the price point for those things. And I think Vimeo has a great on-demand system. You can sell individual videos. You can sell a season. Mm-hmm. If you get that price point right, it's way easier for people to pay the $5 or $10 or whatever, and they'll have it rather than trying to get it from someone else.
I just want to say that you'd be surprised. Not too many people download, so I do the same thing, and I just give everybody, and people who respect what you do will pay. So you have a few percent just built it into the cost, and that's it.
Yeah, Tucker, real quick.
Yep, a lot of people will have the dance studio pay X amount of dollars, and then they don't charge that if a certain number of items are sold, and that way the dance studio is putting pressure for individuals to purchase, which can help with that.
Last question.
Aunt Pruitt says, I received a Raspberry Pi 4 as a gift. How have you all used little devices like this or Arduinos in your production workflow, if at all?
Oh, yeah, we use them all the time. I'll say a couple of mine really quickly, and then I'll hand it off to Paul. So Arduinos we use to run our switchers. Because they're really good. You can set them up where you can do all kinds of little controls for your switchers. You can talk to them and have the switcher do something. You can have Arduinos control lights and, lots of other bits and pieces in it. The Raspberry Pi, I had it around here somewhere, but the Raspberry Pi, we actually shoved into a controller for an Ozo so that we could talk to the Ozo over Ethernet. And so you can, it's a great little platform to program little things into it. We use them. I love them for production glue. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I have several of them around here too, and I'm setting one up at the moment to run Companion, so I can run the Stream Deck with the ATEM switcher.
Yeah. So lots of folks doing. Yeah, Companion's a great one to look at, and there's I was talking to somebody else. I think I talked about this earlier. That is using the Raspberry Pi to tunnel back home so they can control the camera remotely. Control a ATEM switcher and then the camera through that remotely with the Raspberry Pi. So that's another good way to do it. So now, without further ado, we are going to switch channels and start talking about voiceovers. So we're gonna move over. Andrew, we just need to go ahead and kill the YouTube live stream. Bye. See you. Hopefully, we're just gonna keep waving until we stop seeing live.
I just put the host back to you for that. I thought you were gonna do.
Oh well, no, I still need to. You don't need to do that. I can quit it now. Hold on. Let's see here. This is all anticlimactic. It's very embarrassing. Bye.